everyone. I hope you're all doing well in the middle of this coronavirus crisis. I'm Sherry Schmaus, the Alcohol and Drug Control Officer for the Montana Army National Guard, and I'm also a civilian contractor with DizTech. I'm here today to do some virtual training for you, and we're going to review the Engage model that we rolled out in 2019. Now, this picture is very appropriate for the times that we're in right now. People helping people, asking for help when you need it, giving help when you recognize that it's needed. Now, just a reminder, the Engage model is based on the bystander effect and the bystander intervention. And what that means is that the more people that are present when something needs to be done, the less likely anyone will do anything. So what you can do yourselves is to be engaged. Now, in order to be engaged, there's 3 components that you must follow. You must be aware that something needs to be done first, because if you're not aware, you're not going to do anything. You need to feel responsible, because if you're not responsible, you're not going to do anything. If you do not have a plan, you will probably not do anything based on statistics. Now we can look at the soldier in the middle of this triangle here. This soldier may be in crisis with just 1 red flag, maybe 2, maybe 3. Now, some of the red flags that a soldier might be going through are frequent anger outbursts, increased use of alcohol or substances, neglecting responsibilities, reckless or dangerous behavior, serious financial difficulties, withdrawn from family, friends, and other activities, critical errors to work, talk about not wanting to be alive or hopelessness, and worsening appearance or hygiene. Now, all of these things, as you can imagine, might become worse in the middle of this quarantine that we're in the middle of. However, there are people that can recognize signs. We agreed that our peers and our family members would probably recognize more signs than our leaders. So this is super important for your peers and first-line leaders to observe or ask your soldiers how they're doing during this time of crisis so that you can share it with leadership. The taillight effect. We all know the best way to figure out our taillights out is if we did a PMCS on ourselves. The second best way to find out your taillights out is for a buddy or a family member to tell you that your taillight's out. Now, we know the worst way to find out that our taillight's out is to get pulled over by the policeman and possibly get a ticket. Well, it's the same thing with any other issues that we might have in our life, right? If you have an alcohol or substance abuse problem, you should recognize that yourself. If not, maybe family members and friends might remind you that you might possibly have a problem. And I hope that they do before you get pulled over by the police, get a DUI, and possibly lose your career. So if you're struggling right now, especially in the middle of this coronavirus crisis, please reach out to the resources we have available. Through EAP, we can get you some free counseling. We can also get you a free assessment if you're ready to go on forward with a positive life. Speaking of substance abuse, this is a slide that you've seen before many times. We spent 2 hours on it a few years ago. We're going to spend less than 5 minutes. This is just a review. Again, 1 standard drink is 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer, and 1.5 ounces of hard liquor. Now, I know, living in Montana, and especially with all the new creations and inventions that they have with alcohol, that most alcohols now do not stay within those guidelines. We have breweries, we have, the Bud Light Lime-A-Ritas, all of those things have more than 5% alcohol. So it's really difficult, not necessarily now that you're staying at home, you can monitor your own size drinks. But when you go out into society again, it's a challenge because bartenders usually don't stick to these guidelines. They want a bigger tip, and they're used to people having a high tolerance. We also talked about 1 drink an hour. And the reason we talk about that being a guideline is because your body can only process so much alcohol at one time. We talk about if you're a daily drinker, you should stick to 2 drinks so you don't actually build up a tolerance for alcohol and start to have alcohol issues. We do give you a break. They say 3 drinks on any given occasion. On a special occasion, that is. I know many of you would say, well, hey, I have more than 1 special occasion in a day. I have a football game and I drink a 6-pack before halftime. That is true. Some of you do. And I'm not here to tell you to stop drinking completely. As always, I'm here to help you come up with a responsible drinking plan for yourself, your family, and your friends. Now, we also talked about zero consumption for people who are pregnant, people who are under 21, and people who have issues with alcohol. Maybe they have alcoholism, or they have diseases that might be worsened by alcohol consumption. We talk about binge drinking. Now, you can see down there that in our nation, it's considered binge drinking if males have 5 or more drinks in one setting and women have 4 or more drinks. Again, I know Montanans don't traditionally stick to this because we have a drinking culture. But again, evaluate yourself. Are you being responsible when you're drinking? I hope so. I hope you're getting an Uber. If you're staying home, I know it's a more challenging to have that willpower to only stick to those amount of drinks that you're supposed to have. But I hope that you're being responsible. Moving on to the next topic, suicide prevention. Okay, all of those states that you see in orange are super high for suicide. Not just right now, but they've all been, Montana's been top 5 for the last 40 years. As far as suicide prevention goes, looking at this slide, some of the alerts that you might recognize in someone that's thinking about taking their lives, talking about suicide, giving away possessions, researching a way to take their lives, saying goodbye, and any kind of behavior change. Doesn't have to be negative, even if it's positive. Okay, anything that makes you feel it in your gut, you should pursue and engage that person. Time matters. Statistically, we know if someone has a plan to take their life, they usually take their life within 5 minutes to 24 hours. So the most critical time for you to engage with that person is 5 minutes to 3 hours. We know that substance abuse and alcohol and suicide are connected. Montanans, we like to self-medicate. Now this says 1 in 4 people had alcohol in their system at the time of their death. We know that that's a national standard, and Montana's probably at least double that. Now looking at the bottom again, hopelessness, we've heard it before, but let's listen to some ideas that might sound like. What's the point? Nothing I do makes a difference. I am to blame. I can't go on. Now those are those at highest risk to take their lives. If they have a thought of suicide and you're talking to them, that's one thing. If they agree that they have a plan, you need to get the professionals involved. We have behavioral health, we have EAP, we have the suicide crisis hotline, you have your chain of command, you have the chaplain. You need to get somebody else involved. This is serious. Again, as you see that time matters. Unfortunately, hindsight's always 20/20. Now, when it comes to doing anything, 67% of the people, or 2 out of 3, say that they recognize after the fact they could have done something to engage to change the outcome. As far as suicide goes, 4 out of 5 people in Montana showed signs they were going to take their life. In fact, they showed 3 or more signs. Even more important to be aware. Who's responsible? Well, we know when we're in our unit setting, the commander and the first sergeant are usually responsible. But what about when you're out in the community or you're with your peers? Who's responsible then? We trained you last year that everyone should be responsible and engage, regardless of your rank, your age, your experience level. We all can be aware that something needs to be done and take responsibility. And hopefully, if you have a plan, it will go well. Having that plan is important. I know it's difficult to plan right now in this difficult time that we're going through. But we talked about the reason we are direct in the National Guard is because time matters. We see people for 2 days out of the month. And if somebody's thinking about taking their life, we know we have 5 minutes to 3 hours. Now, if you recognize some signs in someone and you're doing annual training, or maybe you're deployed with that person, you may have a little bit more time. You may be able to do the indirect approach, which is search on social media, maybe ask family, friends, ask peers. But please engage with that person if anything's telling you in your gut that there's something wrong. During this time of crisis, again, we all need to be the people. We need to be better. We need to be all we can be. What does that mean? We need to be aware. So be less electronically engaged. Be more present with your family that you're quarantined with. Be responsible. Practice those Army values that we talked about. Even though you're not doing drill right now, you're still a soldier. You're still in the Army, right? 24/7. And I know most of you aren't planners, as we know, but this is a really good time when you have some downtime to practice being a planner. Planning equals success. So I hope you guys get through all of this safely. And again, if you need help, we have so many resources. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. This new app that we have puts everything right at your fingertips. If you know somebody that's struggling, please encourage them to get help. Do a warm handoff with behavioral health. Do a warm handoff with the suicide crisis hotline, the chaplain. Please get help if you need it. I hopefully will see you all again soon. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and engage. Help people, ask for help when you need it, and be a good neighbor.